You're listening to Raising Anchor, the Rhode Island FC podcast, now part of the Blazing Musket family. We're glad you're here. Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. It's the off season. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, and joining me all the way across from the Washington Bridge, a survivor, if you will, is the one co-host with the most, Mr. Jason Carey. Jason, good to see you again. It feels like it's been a while since we've sat down in the studio and talked soccer.
Yeah, it has been a few minutes. It feels like a lifetime ago. I mean, it probably has only been like 3 weeks, but
I mean, we have the sour taste of the USL Cup final. We washed that away with a MLS Cup final. We don't need to talk about that. Hashtag not an MLS podcast, but life has just been moving, and here we are. It's December. We're a day late compared to last year's schedule release. Last year it came out on, I think, the 18th. Maybe it was the 17th, but basically USL's right back on top of this. And we said, hey, like, we only have really interviews, but when the big news comes, like, we'll throw out the Raising Anchor, signal, and you will come, and we will talk soccer.
Yeah, like the bat signal flying over the bridge there. It's like, oh man.
Do you think Tidewater Landing? By the way, did you see the videos of, like, the turf being laid out, Kano's story, and all that?
I have it. It looks phenomenal. I can't wait.
It's like there's so many other things that still need to get done at that stadium. Like, having the turf is not the final piece to it, but man, does that make it just feel more complete than any of the other bells and whistles that still need to get attached.
Yeah, it starts to make it feel like a stadium as opposed to like, well, there's just some dirt there between some seats.
Exactly. And what I was going to go with it was, do you think we'll see, remember during the playoffs, they were putting that Rhode Island FC beacon out on the buildings and whatnot. Do you think they own that? Like, do you think we'll see that on game nights? It's half of these games are going to be overcast. It's New England weather. Are we just going to see a giant Rhode Island FC shield up in the sky?
Maybe as we get closer to it, we'll start to see some of those lights go up on, government buildings, town halls, like things they were doing during the playoffs,
I love it. But we did not come together today to talk about Tidewater. That's a different story when we finally figure out what the naming convention is, and when it's, Dunkin' Donuts or insert no, not CVS Health, but like whenever the big corporation around New England gets around to it.
Autocrat Tidewater.
I'll take Autocrat Tidewater any day of the week. But today we are talking about the schedule release. So for those of you that have obviously probably already seen it, we're just going to read out the schedule as it's been announced by the club. Interestingly enough, the regular season for the USL Championship is actually going to start a week sooner. Our first game will actually take place beginning on 3/15 against Charleston Battery, March 22nd, Phoenix Rising, March 29th, Loudoun United, April 5th, Oakland Roots, April 19th, Detroit City FC, April 26th, Westchester Soccer Club. The Westies are now here. May 3rd is going to be San Antonio FC. We're going to talk about that in a second. May 10th, Monterey Bay Union FC. May 14th, Birmingham Legion. May 17th, I'm going to cut this. I don't like just saying this. So anyways, the schedule came out. Lots of games to talk about here. I think the big story point here when people saw it coming in was, the first 5 official games of the regular season all away, but actually the first 6 games of the season, including the first Jägermeister Cup game, will all be away, as WPRI broke yesterday that the first game at home at Tidewater will not actually occur till May 3rd. I'm surprised. I don't know how you feel about this, but I remember when someone leaked that, the likelihood is that we'd see the first game the first or second week of April. People were like, oh, this stadium's going to fail. It won't even make it to launch. And now it's, 2-3 weeks later. How are your feelings on the fact that we won't see our first home game until May 3rd?
I think there's kind of good and bad of it. We did see a mixed bag of weather up at Burns Stadium. Remember, there was some like still pretty chilly days, and there was one where it was like borderline close to snowing. It was like 36 degrees and was pouring rain. I mean, I think that waiting till the weather is nicer, especially in the location, like it's going to be great. That also means then we have more home games later on throughout the season, especially through the nice like spring, summer kind of months here in Rhode Island. My only concern, though, is when you start the season with that many kind of road games, if you don't start the season off well, you're kind of digging yourself a hole. And hopefully that doesn't become kind of a mental detractor for the squad and be like, oh, 6 games in, we've only picked up, 8-9 points or something.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the reality, someone asked earlier, like, what is the performance trending record of teams that have to play a large swath of their games up front at the beginning away? I don't know the history of it in the USL Championship. I'm still not familiar with the records part. I'm kind of like bookmarking from last season looking forward, but I've always kind of followed the the MLS records. And in 2016, I do remember that Toronto FC was doing a massive upgrade to BMO Stadium in Toronto, and they were going to need extra time at the beginning of the year to finish the construction because they were trying to get through the winter and make the necessary expansions to the stadium. So I went back and looked because I knew it was that team. I just didn't remember which one, but it was the 2016 team. They actually played their first 8 games of the regular season all on the road. In that time, they won 3, they lost 3, and they drew 2 games. But you know what that team went on to go do?
Was that the year they won it?
That was the year they lost, but they did make it all the way till the MLS Cup final, hosting Seattle Sounders, losing at BMO Stadium. But, if that's an indication, sometimes getting all of your demons out of the way at the beginning, it's going to, Kano and the team is going to have to rely on some incredible endurance in that period of time, not being able to rely, because they can't even practice at Tidewater, right? Like, it won't be ready in that capacity for the most part. I'm sure they can get some things done, but it's also going to be extremely cold. They're going to be using the soccer complexes that exist for indoor practicing and training. So you look at, it's going to be these 5-6 games on the road. It's the cold season, but then on top of that, that also puts us at what, like 6 games plus the 4 away during the USL Cup playoffs. Like, that's 10 games that they've played on the road. Like, that's a long time to be away from fans.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Some other interesting things we look at here in the schedule, my favorite West Coast state, Kentucky, Lexington is now in the Western Conference,
I told people a long time ago that I had a feeling Lexington was going to move, and everyone called me crazy. Some like Kaylor Hodges from the USL show was like, that's a bold assumption. And it didn't come from any insider knowledge. It came from the fact that this is a team that was requesting to move up to the championship, right? In an established league. And
so they're hazing them?
Well, I just, you look at what it is, and it's not fair that Birmingham, through attrition, just continued to creep on that line of like, you're the closest state into the, or closest club into the Western Conference, when like that's a big undertaking. And just because other teams failed to operate, you get punished. It kind of feels like maybe hazing to a certain degree of like, hey, you got to pay your dues. You want to come in the championship? You got to go play in the West. But I'm also going to tell you, looking at the Western Conference versus the Eastern Conference, I know that the West, surprisingly, we didn't really talk about this after the Cup final was over. The East has been the stronger performing conference in the last 4 or 5 years, but the West has won it the last 4 in a row. So like when, we always talk about like, is it, the table record that matters, or is it winning? We all know that winning the Cup is the most important thing. The West has managed to take it for the last four in a row, whereas the Eastern Conference, though, dominates all the stat lines. So that could be a blessing in disguise for Lexington.
Yeah, maybe that helps them out.
And from what I'm being told, Lexington is spending like crazy. So they're trying to build a very deep roster. So this may work. But yes, there are teams in front of them that are more West than they will be as they play their first season in the Western Conference. Looking at this schedule, we kind of touched on the May 3rd piece, but like let's really talk about this away opponent here coming to play us. San Antonio FC is going to be the first team ever to play against Rhode Island FC at Tidewater. Is this the team that we want to see? Is this the one that builds up the hype?
Possibly. It's hard to say. I don't know what their offseason has looked so far. And like, it's December. They still have plenty of time to kind of retool. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But the first 2 home games we have in a row are both Western Conference opponents, so that'd be interesting to see how that pans out.
I had someone ask on the Discord. They said, what time do we think these games will be? I was told early on that if Rhode Island FC could control their own fate, in the early, spring, late winter games, they would want as often as possible to bring those games into the daylight period of time. So like a 4 p.m. kickoff. When you own your own stadium, like you get to kind of control that narrative to a certain point. But since these are West Coast teams, like it may be a little irresponsible to say, hey, like you're going to kick off for, at your time at 1 p.m., Eastern time or excuse me, Pacific time. But that being said, like we had to play a final at, 12 o'clock Eastern time. So all bets are off.
Yeah. And if any of us out east here want to watch West Coast matches, those are often at 10 p.m. at night. So I don't know. I don't hear any complaining from them out there.
I think San Antonio is a fun game to play. Like there's not exactly any kind of rivalry built. We definitely handled them the last time away at Toyota Field in San Antonio. It's a new head coach. I think his name's Carlos like Llamosa or something like that. But he'll have a few games under his belt. It won't be their first game of the season. I don't know that there's a lot of bad blood or good blood yet between these two teams. So it's exciting. Some team has to be the first. New Mexico United, we didn't know that they'd be the first, and that turned out to be a great game. So I'm super excited. If we roll back the tape, the first away game, our first of 5 regular, again 6 total, is going to be Charleston Battery. We're basically replaying the Eastern Conference Final. How do you think Charleston's going to receive us?
That should be interesting. I mean, I don't know how their fan base views us in terms of if this is a rivalry or yet with them. We played them 3 times last year, considering the playoffs and the regular season. I think maybe they, considering we kept a decent amount of our core, maybe that, don't want to play us again, that kind of thing. Marcanic is gone. I don't know what the rest of their roster looks like. I've definitely been enjoying kind of this off season, and I'm seeing a lot of these news, but I'll kind of wait till we get a little closer to the season to kind of okay, let me take a step back. Let me see, okay, what happened, who went where, kind of breathe it in. But for now, I'm just kind of enjoying this holiday season.
Like wait where the dust settles and then make decisions. Like Emilio Yakaza re-signed. Like what does that even mean at this point, right? Like
yeah.
That's fair. So, I mean, I think Charleston's a great start because both teams will be looking to find each other's footing. And we saw this early, right, in the history of Rhode Island FC, but also in some of the teams that maybe started strong and fell apart. Like I'm thinking Monterey Bay again. Tampa Bay started strong and kind of found and then lost their form midway through the season. I look at it as these are going to be 2 teams that are still, I mean, we are so complete when it comes to the carryover. It'll be really interesting to see how Charleston responds to that. So I think it's a great one. I don't see any real concerns in this first set of games up until our first home opener.
It's interesting. We got the bye first round again there. I mean, maybe
thanks
that
Brooklyn FC.
Is that also because of the weather? Maybe at this point.
No, I think when you look at the amount of weeks that come across the schedule for 24 teams, my guess is Brooklyn was going to get it automatically as the expansion team that needed, because they were building from nothing. My guess is okay, who needs this as badly as Brooklyn did? And we were like, hey, we don't have a stadium yet, so could we find a way to get it in those first few weeks? And they said, take it. Again, it's all conjecture, it's all theory. No one's told me that, but it's not. Buys are strategically placed to help alleviate problems around the league, and then help teams do what they need to do to complete transactions or to complete business. So I definitely think that was scripted. That was not just a random, we didn't pull a rabbit out of the hat.
That kind of tracks.
So I'm looking at this schedule. There's, so many games. We're going to talk about the Jägermeister Cup here in a second, but what of the regular season games, what are the big call outs? What are you seeing here that really is grabbing your attention?
I mean, some interesting things here. We have 2 sets of back-to-back opponents. I don't really like that we're playing Hartford 3 times and Pittsburgh 3 times when there are 4 West Coast teams that we are not playing at all this year.
Well, let's talk about that. So the 4 teams that we will not be facing in the Western Conference and as part of the interconference that Jägermeister has removed from our regular season: Orange County Soccer Club. We've got the USL Cup champions, the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. I don't know how we dropped the ball on not seeing that team in this season. That seems, I don't even know how to really respond to that. And then we've got FC Tulsa, and then we've got the newcomers to the championship in Sporting Lexington. So we don't even get to see the former expansion team doesn't even get to see and I'm using air quotes here, the other expansion team. So go ahead. Sorry, I just want to make sure listeners knew which teams were the ones that were not going to be seeing us.
Yeah, so I understand we're doing this whole new Jägermeister Cup thing, which I am excited about. I just hope that maybe it kind of can evolve. I'm not a huge fan of like group stage type things. They make sense in like a World Cup, right? You kind of have a certain amount of countries you have to get through some of them. But in this sense, I'd rather see kind of single elimination games. You know, think of something like the EFL Cup in England or FA Cup, something like that, where what you could do to elongate the tournament is have some of the smaller teams go through some kind of stages, right? Then maybe a round or two later, then you bring in the championship teams. Like I said, very similar to one of those cups, and do that throughout the season. Kind of have the final in a similar vein somewhere towards the end of the year, maybe before you head into playoffs. That would be cool. But with this group stage thing, you know, we have groups where like we're not even playing one of the teams in our group.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. I want to stay focused on just the games here. I will say what's interesting to your point, though, about like the scheduling perspective of it, is that for these 4 games, right, they are replacing regular season games, and we have 3 midweek setups this season. I don't know if we had 3 in 2024. I know we had 2. We may have had 3, and I'm just blanking on it. But right now, we have 3 stretches of games. So the first one is from May 10th through May 17th. We take on Monterey Bay, Birmingham Legion, and the Tampa Bay Rowdies. So Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday.
So really quickly, May, there's 6 games we play. So that's going to be a huge month.
It's a very
for us.
congested month, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we fast forward again a month later into June. We've got Miami FC, Louisville City FC, and North Carolina FC stretching from June 7th to June 14th. So again, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. And then in August, we have the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, Detroit City FC, and Loudoun United. And those are all, I believe, I should probably check, but I believe those are all regular championship games and not one of the Jägermeister Cup matches. And that's going to be from August 2nd to August 9th. So we have 3 sets of midweek. But all of our regular season games are coming at the expense of Wednesday lineups versus these Jägermeister Cup games getting sprinkled in as the midweek rotation. So that's a bit interesting to me. At least in the 2 that we have where they're coming to us, whether it's a USL 1 team or a championship team, you kind of almost think like we give it the Open Cup treatment. Like those come on Wednesdays, and the regular season games that matter towards the playoff run, those fall on the Saturday, but it's not the same order. We've replaced it, and we have this Jägermeister Cup on just normal Saturday positioning. And I don't know yet how I kind of feel about that.
I mean, with like, you know, how I mentioned the comparison to the Premier League, they have those weekends where they take it off, right? And it's FA Cup weekend or something.
Right, but so, we're not there. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing is we're not there where we can say, okay, we're going to play this game on a Wednesday and we're going to expect a big turnout, right? I mean, you have these historic traditional clubs in Europe and everywhere else kind of like around the world, South America, where they're very soccer crazy, where you like, doesn't matter what day of the week you put a game on, people will show up. The reality is it's still kind of a new sport to us in terms of, you know, what, maybe 30 years where we've really been kind of taking it a little more serious. So on these Wednesday games, we see like half capacity at stadiums, if that. So it's kind of putting a little bit of a, I don't know, burden on the club in a weird way.
I think the league is trying to really lean in that they think that there can be rivalries built here that are, you know, like it's a calculated measure. They're saying somewhere in their mind that the Louisville game on a Wednesday is not going to draw the same crowd as, you know, the Hearts of Pine, which maybe that's true. Hearts of Pine have something really special. I imagine that game is going to be a very well attended, well traveled match.
Yeah, on a Saturday, enough of them will like take it off and come down. Whereas
right.
You say Wednesday night, maybe I don't want to drive that, you know, 3.5 or whatever hours.
Okay, yeah, but
there.
like Westchester does not deserve, you know, a spot above Birmingham Legion or Detroit City FC. That's all I'm kind of saying behind it. So I'm excited. I'd say to kind of answer my own question, the games that I'm the most excited about. You mentioned that there's 2 games that are back-to-back. Pittsburgh Riverhounds as part of the Jägermeister Cup, and then also as the regular season, and then we also have Hartford Athletic. This is insane. Like, we need to really talk about this because Hartford Athletic has to travel to us. Not only do we play them all 3 games within a 30-day span, they have to travel to us, and then the next weekend they have to come back and do it all over again. And if they, like, whether they win the first one or they lose the first one, like you have to go back and do that again. Like, if we dunk on them and they have to come back to the House of Pain for another whooping, like I just don't see the benefit for either team having to administer that kind of level of punishment.
But then you also see things like that where teams play each other too often or back to back, where maybe one time they do get dunked on and then they go back home, they're frustrated, maybe their coach decides to lock everything up, and then the next game you see a really tight game where they try to focus on defense, and it kind of kills that, where you want to have that rivalry, those games kind of breathe. You want to let them aerate, right? You don't want to just, right off the bat get right back into it. It more often than not, I find that those don't. They kind of, one of them ends up being a dead rubber.
Well, here's the interesting thing: the Jägermeister round is after the regular round. The derby comes first, and then that result happens. It sits there. It festers one way or another. And then the next weekend, you're playing for Jägermeister, which at that point, you don't know how the groups are shaking out, like who's going to advance into the actual rounds of death, or the elimination rounds, excuse me. So, like, does that even matter then? Like, I would argue, and I don't know enough I haven't looked at the rest of the league's scheduling, like, are all games that weekend? If they're not, I would have flipped the asterisk, and I would have put the Jägermeister Cup as like, hey, here's this tournament, go feel each other out. You go. Because it comes down to a shootout at the end if there's a draw. So, like, go feel yourselves out. Like, go get to a point, make a statement, and then next weekend, it's where it really matters.
I think realistically, they're probably looking at this as like, okay, Jaeger, we've got this advertising partner. It's on Saturday. You're saying it's going straight to a shootout. There's probably some kind of advertisement there.
Sure, but
maybe they're playing 4D chess too. They know that, hey, these are responsible adults. I can't do a bunch of Jaeger shots on a Wednesday.
Well, they're both Saturday games, though. I'm just asking.
That's what I mean. That's why it has to be on Saturday.
But would you put the Jaeger Cup, if you're going to play the same team 2 times in a row at the same venue? I could understand, like the Riverhounds, it's a little bit different, right? It's a Jaeger, it's a regular season, and then it's the Jaeger. But for the regular season one, they're here at Tidewater, and then we have to go to Pittsburgh to play the Jaeger Cup the next weekend. But this one, Hartford comes to us both times. Would you rather get the Jaeger with your closest rival, with a team that you do not like? Would you rather get the never before been in tournament one out of the way, and then get into the regular season derby, or would you keep it the way you have it?
I think it doesn't matter at that point.
Oh, I think it does, because you have a shootout. You have to get a point. You have to get a win in the Jaeger Cup. So you walk away from that one, like, because you could end with a 1-1 draw, like we did away to Hartford last year. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. You come out of the Jaeger Cup with we lost in penalties, or oh yeah, we beat you in penalties. Like that I don't know, it just sets a different level of pressure.
Yeah, but you're thinking of a very specific circumstance.
Well, I don't know how many teams in this league, Jason, have been blessed by Brett Louie and the USL gods to play their rival back-to-back games in a single week and get both at home. You're right. I don't know.
If anything, that it looks to me like they're doing this on purpose for like saving like traveling costs for teams.
Well, that is the point of the region. They'll say it's to build up the rivalries, but with the USL One's involvement, you're spot on. It is to save money and reduce the travel.
And like, I'm all for regional tournaments and things of that like.
That's what the Open Cup is.
But yeah, but you have Open Cup, and I'm fine with adding this cup too, but don't have them back to back. Move stretch them around.
That is the biggest miss. And the fact that it's happened twice in our schedule, I haven't looked at other teams around the league to see how much this is happening. I imagine with the teams that have like 6 or 7 teams in their groups, like it's probably not an issue at all. But like this is a bit suspect. But having said that, like I'd still, no matter what, I'd rather have Hartford here twice than have to go to Hartford 2 times in the 3 games that we play for the season. So I'll allow it. I'm sure Hartford fans everywhere are furious right now. But you know what? You need to go and hire a USL operations vice president, make him your president, and then let him go get a promotion to president of competition. And there's no collusion. So I don't know what to tell you.
Does anyone actually work for that club? Isn't it just like 5 interns and like one person?
I bet you the mascot has now been promoted to the president, the Galactus or whatever. So I want to end just really fast. Is there one game that calls out to you besides the Jaeger Cup games? Because I really enjoy the fact that we are ending our season the same way we began 2024.
I did notice that. I like that.
I'm kind of pumped for the New Mexico United away. It's weird that we're ending the season away because we're starting so much of the season away. When you look at it, there's a period of time where from like June 7th through I think August 9th, we only have like one away game. So it's like that summer stretch is going to be, I mean, we were hot last summer, but that summer stretch is going to be more important now than ever in 2025. But I am kind of really stoked that we're playing New Mexico United for the last game of the season. I kind of want to stick around. I'm going to that game. That's like my travel destination for the year. I know we haven't talked about it yet. Kind of want to stick around and see what they got for like the Halloween stuff, like Day of the Dead, all that jazz. Like that could be a really fun time. But that to me is the game that I'm of, besides the derby and stuff. Is there any other game out here that's like kind of calling your name?
No, I mean that one kind of, I noticed that too. And that was kind of a cool thing. I was like, maybe we should go to that. Kind of, they sent a lot of their fans out to visit us, and that was really cool kind of way to start our season off and, bookend this next season by, going out there.
Going crazy in Kirky. I will say the other game that I just kind of thought is like an important game. We have another July 5th game, so another like 4th of July at home kind of situation. So that's exciting. And then speaking of schedules, someone already beat me to it in the Discord, but I wanted to go over it because we had last year, remember, we were going to play Phoenix Rising, and then that was going to overlap with the Inter Miami game. So we moved. I mean, they're never saying it was messy, but come on, let's get honest, everyone. They moved it for messy. So I went and ran the cross tabulation for the Revs games, and there are only, it looks like right now, 5 games, maybe 6 that have overlap with the Revs home schedule. So for those of you out there that, you still go to both sets of games, and for what the Revolution look like they're doing right now, they're really trying to retool and rebuild. There's only going to be a couple. So here's the overlap. You've got on June 14th, Revolution take on FC Cincinnati while we'll be playing North Carolina FC. And again, the TBD, like we don't know the times for these, so they may not be overlap at all. They may be like go here at 1 o'clock and get here at 7. On June 28th, they take on the Colorado Rapids while we play the Portland Hearts of Pines in the Jaeger Cup. So like that one, you got to come to us. Like that's not even up for debate. That'll be the hottest game in New England of the day. July 19th, they'll be playing Orlando City while we've got the Derby. So that's again. Like,
wait. Who did you say they're playing on June 28th?
Aren't they playing the Portland Hearts of Pine?
No. Who are the refs playing?
They're playing Colorado Rapids.
Okay. I thought you said something else.
Oh, well, maybe I did. I'll run back the tape. And then on August 9th, the Revolution take on DC United while we take on Loudoun. So it's like a DC who's got the DC linkage there.
Yeah.
And then on the 30th of August, they take on Charlotte while we take on Charleston Battery. And then on September 13th, they've got Toronto while we've got Indy 11. So like, I think there's a couple of games in there that the better draw actually is Rhode Island FC. Maybe the Revs will change their schedule around for once. They're gonna be like, oh shoot, the Derby's on. We're gonna have to cancel this game. Could you imagine, dude? Could you imagine? Not an MLS podcast, but like, if we could ever get Nielsen ratings, I bet you were the bigger draw against the Derby versus that Orlando City game. I bet you we will be. But maybe. Let's get into this Jaeger Cup because that's kind of the final part of business that I want to talk about before we get listeners to what they thought they were listening to, which was an interview with assistant coach Karl Spratt, and that is the Jägermeister Cup. So we've been kind of toying around with it. I just want to ask you straight up, is this the lineup we wanted? We're now facing the Hearts of Pine and Hartford Athletic at home, and then we are facing Westchester Soccer Club and Pittsburgh Riverhounds away. Is this the 4 teams that we wanted to see, and is this the 4-team composition when it comes to away and home that we wanted to see?
I think the only thing I would have changed there is maybe not playing Pittsburgh because we don't have like a good track record with them. Yeah, Lily Ball's going to Lily Ball. I mean, we'll see how this next year pans out. I don't know if that'll be any different, but I'm glad to play the lower division teams. That's cool. Maybe I don't want to play Hartford 3 times, but like,
but you do.
I don't. Well, Detroit, was another one of those teams that kind of has been rough for us. So if I had to pick one of those two, I would definitely pick Hartford.
Right. I mean, like I agree with that. My only beef with this this lineup is the fact that we're not playing Portland away to Portland. I think it would have been a lot more fun for us to travel to the Hearts of Pine, but I also understand the draw of having them come down here. And obviously they can't host every single USL championship team. So I'd say it's just maybe that. Pittsburgh, Detroit, they kind of almost feel swappable at this point, interchangeable. The only thing that I guess is a little bit of a sad tear jerk is, Maxi Rodriguez doesn't get his reunion, which they've been hating on him on some of their social media, or not their social media, but their own podcast. They're all like, oh, he's not going to work at Rhode Island FC. He's a bum. Like where's that coming from? Like he's amazing. Like thank you for Maxi Rodriguez, Detroit. But yeah, that I would say those are the only things. Like maybe it would have been fun to go to Portland. I did look at the groups for Group 4 on all of their matches. It's a tough climb for the USL 1 teams. They have to play all of the USL championship clubs for each of their matches. Meanwhile, for us, everyone knows we play. I already said that. Pittsburgh has Westchester, Portland, Detroit, and us, because obviously they're in the same group. And then Hartford has Detroit, Portland, Westchester, and us. But then it's just kind of interesting how like these USL 1 teams, they all have to deal with the USL championship.
I wonder if that's in a similar vein. We're already making allusions to like EFL and FA Cup earlier. A lot of times they want that bigger team in terms of it's the bigger draw, potential to make more money from, especially if they're hosting there, that kind of deal. That like, hey, you want to prove yourself against the big boys. On top of that,
we'll see. I mean, you're not wrong. It's just going to come down to, I guess, really the level of competition, right? Like, and here's what it'll come down to. Again, we've talked about it. The Jaeger Cup has now replaced 4 regular season games. We got blown out. We didn't do well against Colorado Springs, but you know what? If we go and destroy Westchester 7-1 in like an Open Cup upset kind of level of a game, does that make it as fun to watch when we could have had the competition of Orange County Soccer Club or Colorado Springs? I don't know. It's going to be a wait and see.
Those are, definitely good things that we're going to kind of have to watch and pan out to see how this competition plays out. I, didn't really check out any of the Jägermeister Cup earlier this year, but I do know, like, hearing from some of the results, like some of those were like crazy wild games. So, if some of that excitement can kind of translate now that we bring all the championship teams in, I'm down.
We shall see. It's going to be an exciting one. The only other thing I can think of is really just the fact that for some reason Sacramento Republic gets to come all the way back to us again. So I was looking at that, like, because most of these teams flipped. If they were here last year, we switched. Sacramento seems to be the only one right now that got stuck coming back across again. We will go see Paul Blanchett and the Oakland Roots in the Coliseum, so that's going to be exciting. But nevertheless, I'm pumped. This is exactly what I wanted to see before Christmas. We now have a plan. The away travels are being started and prepared. It's an exciting time. Soccer is just around the corner, and if you blink, it'll be here in the blink, literally the blink of an eye. So I'm excited. Anything else before we move on to Carl?
No, like I said, it's just around the corner. Going to enjoy the this little bit of time off we have before we get right back into that grind.
With that being said, here's your assistant coach and director of goalkeeping, Karl Spratt. Joining me today is a very special guest this offseason, RAFC assistant coach and director of goalkeeping, Coach Karl Spratt. Coach, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is all ours. You are not unfamiliar with Rhode Island, going back, looking at your CV, looking at your accomplishments here in New England, and specific to Rhode Island, it's a welcome state to have you be able to not only return to the area, but be able to jump on this podcast. If we can jump right into it, I'm looking here at, quite the career that you've accumulated, both in your player development and your coaching across the American soccer landscape. You've coached for teams like New England Revolution, UMass Lowell, Providence College, and Philadelphia Union. But you've also spent some time in your native area with Sunderland AFC and Darlington FC. How does a native from Newcastle end up across the pond and land here in New England?
Just opportunity, really. after kind of got finished with my playing career, I had a connection who was involved in kind of bringing young coaches, young players across to the States. I got an opportunity to work some summer camps, which was my first real kind of integration to the sport over here. That was a really beneficial experience for me because I got to experience a different culture, but also got to meet some wonderful people, some wonderful families. My first kind of interaction with New England was actually in New Hampshire, Windham, New Hampshire, with a family who I'm still extremely close with, and that was my first real opportunity to experience the region. Off the back of kind of working with camps, I got a chance to work in the Revs Academy, which was my first real integration to, I guess, the ever-evolving professional landscape and the academy system. This was back in 2008. So the Revs Academy was very much in its infancy. But yeah, just through opportunity, after kind of I finished playing during the off-season, come across some camps, and then just really meeting people and just developing relationships.
Speaking of that timestamp around the Revolution Academy time, that would put you in the same orbit as a young Cano Smith. You said you were in the academy part of it, but did you ever at one point coach or influence what Cano was doing with the senior team, with the Revs?
Around the senior team a little bit as a coach, but Cano's kind of playing career was just coming to an end when I was in the academy. I think it was my second year in the academy when Cano kind of started to look at what's next in his career. So yeah, we definitely crossed paths. We spent a good couple of years on staff with the academy, with the 16s and the 18s. Zach was in there too, Amos, a couple of the guys like Isaac and a couple of guys who are on the roster now, but kind of didn't cross paths with Cano then. But yeah, we very much kind of started our, say, kind of coaching careers together, and that's really where the relationship started. And we immediately hit it off. We have similar personalities. We can bust each other's chops really openly, which we do to this day. And again, that's just kind of how a relationship works, right? Is you can kind of speak open and honestly with people, and you know when to have a bit of a laugh, but you also know when it's time to be serious.
I always love asking how, especially in the player pool, how they end up making the decisions to sign for Rhode Island FC. But those can be, measured in months, right? That can be a year contract, a 2-year. When you start to look at the technical staff and where you want to kind of implement your next development or coaching strategy, that's a much larger window of time. Did you ever see yourself early on going, hey, one day I could end up with Cano, or is that just kind of funny how the universe works that way sometimes?
Well, I think the game itself just presents so many opportunities, and as a technical staff, one thing that our group is really built on is the person. People come first. That's something that I've lived by, and Cano and I both had a mentor, Brian Scales, who was the academy director, who's now down in Charlotte with Charlotte FC, and he was a big proponent of the people and the person first. So when you start to think, okay, what could happen and what could develop in the future, it really centers around the person. And and Cano and I, we've always kind of treated each other with respect, and we know that people are going to go different ways and different avenues in their career, but if the relationship's strong and the people are good, and you treat each other the way that you'd want to be treated, then you never know where you might kind of cross paths again. And so when this opportunity came about and Cano made the call to see if I was interested, it was a clear one, but it was a clear one based on I know Cano as a person and I know what he stands for. And then, as what the football picture looks like, that was a more kind of deeper dive in the terms of the conversation, but no questions working with the people in the organization because I know they're top class.
So what was it about the project? Because, when we talked at the block party, you had mentioned how important it was for you to get back to the New England area. It's such a big component of yours and your family's DNA. But, a lot of coaches want to go the other direction, right? They want to get their chops in an academy and then maybe get into USL and then try to get into some element of an MLS team. You have such a rich pedigree. What was it about Rhode Island FC that stood out that you're like, that's where I want my next step to be?
The professional landscape is so tough, right? And we all know what we're getting into when we enter this career, but you don't get a chance to start something from the ground up in professional sports. Certainly in my background back in the UK, but even in the environments and organizations I've been a part of over here, it was always a case of this is how it's been done before, this is what our club stands for, and to be at literally the ground up. We can make this organization, we can make it stand for what we want it to stand for, and to have that opportunity was just something that I couldn't pass up. Just being at the ground up, I think everyone's ambitious, everyone wants to continue to develop personally and professionally, but to be at the ground up of something at a professional level in a part of the world which means so much to my family and I was just something that I just couldn't pass up.
Speaking of that meaning to your family, you're now home, hallowed ground, sacred ground for you. What have been some of your favorite scenes to return to, your environment, maybe a favorite restaurant? What's welcomed you back with arms wide open to the Ocean State?
Oh, I mean, when I moved to Philly, we didn't actually sell our house, so this was an easy transition back. We knew the neighborhood. Our favorite things to do in the region, we definitely, my family has been kind of going on a week vacation to Martha's Vineyard in the summer, so that was something that I could be a little closer to. They still went this year when I was in the middle of the season, so I could pop over on a day off and be a part of that, which when you're in different parts of the countries is not as easy to do. The restaurant scene, there's so many good restaurants, in kind of the Providence area. Dolores is one of my favorites, good friends with Joaquin and Marco and his mom Maria. They're big supporters of the organization. Their first El Rancho Grande, their first restaurant was possibly my wife and I's first place we ever went to when we moved into Rhode Island. So the fact that their restaurant's going from strength to strength. So Dolores is a big fan of ours, and we love kind of going there. So, and then just like the hole in the walls, the seafood shacks and down at Narragansett, and then obviously you go a little bit further up north. We've got my wife's family owns bars and restaurants in the North Shore. So there's lots of good places that we can go in the North Shore that we get the inside scoop on. But I'd say my favorite spot is Dolores. So it's always nice to kind of go home, and it was the place we took Koke when we first signed him. We took him there, and those guys were really excited to meet him and to see the first signing in club history. So that's just, we talk about the community and how important it is, and I think that's just something that lives strong through me and my family.
That's fantastic. And speaking back to those goalkeeping origins, you as a coach, you've had many roles in your career so far, but goalkeeping is always the tether to it, whether it's total academy development or technical skills inside the goalkeeping arena. But when I look back at your player time, I couldn't find much on you other than that you had a stint with the youth academy at Manchester United. Is it safe to assume you've always been a keeper by trade yourself?
I was. My father was a goalkeeper, played at a really good level, and that was something that I was, whenever I was off school sick or something like that, I would always be around it. But yeah, always been a goalkeeper, always been passionate about it. It's not natural to wanting to stand in the way of something that someone's trying to kick as hard as they can at you, So that whole goalkeepers are a little bit different, definitely rings true. But it's just a position that I feel it's so rewarding, that you live on a knife's edge. There's a lot of pressure on you, so you've got to have a strong personality to play it. I was fortunate to be a part of a really good football academy growing up. I was never going to be a superstar, and that was the reason my career kind of came to an end. I picked up a couple of injuries here and there, but it was ultimately because I was never going to be good enough to kind of break through at a club like that. I played at a couple of lower leagues, but I had some really good people advising me and find a way to stay in the game. So I went back to school, got my education, and started kind of developing a coaching pathway through education and what makes a good coach, because that's really what we are, whether it's at the academy level or the senior level. It's you're educators. You want to teach and help develop people to create a picture that you see in your coach's eye, and being a teacher is important. And I think that's from Carno to Dave to Coach. We coach these guys every day. That's something we said we're going to do right from day one, and I think it's a vastly important part of the job.
Where is being a goalkeeper coach the most difficult? You already are in this smaller pool of players, right? Finite resources. Is it in the initial player selection as you're trying to build for the roster, making sure you get the right guy for what you want to deploy on the season? Is it managing the minutes between the keeper core? Or is it something else around the tactical integration of what you have to accomplish for the season? Because your success is built on the club's success, but at the same time, you have a completely different set of key performance indicators that you have to go after with your players. What is the most difficult part about being a goalkeeper coach?
I think it becomes more difficult if there's no communication. I think the game has developed, the position has developed over the years for sure. Back when I started to coach, it was very much an isolated position. You coach the goalkeepers, they are apart from the team, and then all of a sudden when they're integrated back in, if there's no communication between the coaches and what they want the goalkeeper, how they see the goalkeeper being a part of something, then it's a really difficult position. I think something that we've spoken about as a staff a lot, and definitely with the Revs Academy, and then obviously when I went down to the Union, they were very much a part of the team. So when you're talking about like the KPIs of a goalkeeper, they are easily separated, but the good staff, the good teams, they align with how you want your team to play. So when we're looking at Koke and Jackson, and then obviously Nate last year, those goalkeepers, their behaviours aligned with how we wanted the team to play. So they were very much a part of the team and not trained apart from it. Yeah, listen, the training environment sometimes is a little isolated, but every single day the goalkeepers are integrated with the team. They are a big part of it. The training sessions are planned and structured with what are the goalkeeper behaviours going to be in these little moments. How is the goalkeeper behaviours going to affect the overall success or failure of a certain activity? So the integration is really important, and I think the communication allows the role to be very enjoyable, but also allows the role to be have a positive impact on everyone who's involved, as opposed to just saying, okay, you guys are over there and we need you for the last 15, 20 minutes. I think that the game and the position has evolved so much that that's not really the case anymore.
I'm so glad you talk about the position evolving, because I remember when I was growing up watching it, it was just like you needed to be a good shot stopper, and then it was just punt the ball along and see what the teams could create offensively. But that's changed in the landscape over the last 20 years. I guess I would ask you now, looking at the modern era, looking at where the game is heading in the next step of its evolution, what is the skills that a keeper needs outside of their defensive stats nowadays? What makes a keeper in the complete package, if you will, of today's game?
I think personality and presence of a goalkeeper, they're two big words that I use with the guys a lot. What is your personality like? Are you willing to put yourself, find an opportunity to put yourself out there to help you, gain a foundation in a game or in a training environment? Because again, everyone starts off at the same point, but you need that moment to, okay, there's my foundation for performance. What can I build upon? So, if a goalkeeper doesn't have the personality or the bravery to do that, doesn't exude the presence that is needed to be a leader of men in that position, that's a really tough thing to teach. You can advise and you can coach, but that's really an innate characteristic that goalkeepers need. So personality and presence is so important for me. All of our goalkeepers have a great personality. They have strong presence, both in the locker room, but on the field and the training pitch. So that's an area where you can't be a top class goalkeeper, an elite performer, without having a strong personality and a strong presence in the game.
So would you say that like the keepers out there, because not every keeper I've seen in leagues is a leader, right? Mm-hmm. They may be in the moment, like you said, be able to communicate with the team and express their intent, but not every single human being out there is a leader. Is that really the difference maker between good to great?
Being a leader, but also being accountable, right? I think it's easy. You see a lot of goalkeepers now, after something, they get up and they start yelling at the defenders in front of them. I always ask the goalkeepers that I work with, definitely the 3 guys I work with this year, but also the goalkeepers I've worked with in previous roles, to look at themselves first. That's same whenever you point your finger at someone, there's always 3 fingers pointing back at you. So the accountability of the athlete is so important. There will be times where you need to kind of raise the level, of what you say to someone in front. But there's a big difference between shouting at someone and shouting to someone, right? So accountability for me is vastly important. Is it the difference between a good goalkeeper and a great goalkeeper? I think when you get to this level, the goalkeepers, they've obviously got really key important skill sets. That's why they're at the level to begin with, right? So now it's about, okay, what is your point of difference? What is a super strength, if you will? and, you know, developing the personality, developing the presence, making sure that if they do have accountability, relationships around them will naturally develop. And I think that can be the difference, for sure. Now, if you get opportunities, now you've got to perform, you've got to apply your skill sets, and opportunities are earned, not given, very much so. But I think, you know, in our case, when, let's say, Jackson was provided an opportunity due to Koke going down injured, like, he earned the opportunity to maintain that spot, but the personality and the presence that he showed within the group made the players in front of him look around and go, okay, this might be your first year as a professional, but you're acting, you're behaving the right way, you're accountable for your actions, you're finding moments that you can raise the level on us. So the respect, because of the relationship, because of the accountability, is just a natural progression, and I think that's what he did really well.
Does that change in terms of the quality of the league and the expectations there? You know, you said a lot of those attributes that I see as transferable no matter where. Those are just foundational principles. But then also, you know, you're not going to go get a Matt Turner to sign for a USL championship at this point. Maybe earlier in his career, but not certainly now. Do your expectations as a goalkeeper coach have to change with the ability to find talent within the league you're coaching in?
I don't think so. You know, as I mentioned right at the start, it's the person first, right? And I think if you do enough homework on the person, you'll find out, are they open-minded? Are they open-minded to improve? Are they open-minded to get better? Are they open-minded to try new things? And if they're open-minded to try new things, listen, everyone's got different levels of ability, but it's how open-minded is that person to put themselves outside of their comfort zone. And therefore, if they're being willing to put themselves outside of the comfort zone, my job as a coach, my job as a teacher, the coach's staff, the environment, then I've got to do my job too. You know, it's about them. Okay, they've got to apply it on the field, but I'm responsible for helping these guys improve. And, you know, at our level, you're looking at incremental increases, right? You're not looking at big dramatic changes of behavior or technical understandings or technical ability. It's incremental increases. And I think, you know, through experience, you can find out, okay, what are certain guys' trigger points? But I think expectations, you know, how Karl wants the team to play, how the goalkeepers are a part of that, like those expectations, in order for us to be successful, they have to be there. You know, they can't drop, or they can't, you know, all of a sudden change. You know, that's how we want the team to play. A coach's job is to try and make sure you're able to fit that, you know, that square peg in that square hole, you know, and not try and jam something in there. But it's a progress, you know. But I don't think your expectations should change. I think your level of understanding changes, but I don't think your expectations should change.
That's a great answer. And to that progress, you've now seen, I think, every level of professional soccer. I mean, even in the collegiate level, but you've also seen Division III, Division II, Division I talent. How would you rate the overall evolution of goalkeepers in North America right now?
I think it's always been a position where the country succeeded at, you know. Remember growing up back in England, you know, watching guys like Brad Friedel and Ian Foyer play for West Ham, and then, you know, you go down the Casey Keller route, and then obviously Tim Howard comes into the setup, and now obviously Matty doing a really good job in the Premier League. You know, I remember Matt when we drafted Matt in New England, and Matt would come down and work at Providence with us, you know, just to get some reps in the off season. So, you know, he was clearly a special talent, but his attitude and his people skills was something that were really impressive, and, you know, no surprise that he's gone on to have the success that he has. But I think the position itself, I think, you know, the ball handling ability of an American goalkeeper, the shot stopping ability, the natural athleticism has always been there. The footballing ability is definitely evolving and definitely getting better, just as the game worldwide changes. But I also think, like, it's really important as a goalkeeper to be able to defend the goal first. You know, they have to be a footballer, they have to have an understanding of tactical principles from a team, but you have to be able to defend the goal. And I think there was maybe a 4 or 5 year period where that would almost be forgotten about. You know, it's almost in possession goalkeepers. To be a part of the team, you know, you've got to do something with the ball for sure. You've got to be able to defend the goal too. And I think I'll never get away from that being, okay, what I look for first, because I think that is something that's the talk about the personality and the presence of the goalkeeper. You can see really, really quickly what the personality of the goalkeeper is like, of how they defend the goal. Are they Does it hurt when they let a goal in? Are they stubborn in their behaviours? Are they willing just to do whatever it takes? You know, no matter what it looks like, there's a big separation now in teaching of technique versus effectiveness. And I'll always err on the side of effectiveness because that's ultimately what you're going to get judged on.
You've coached some of the best goalkeepers in that time, from Matt Turner to Austin Avisa, Kiesel Broom, Andre Blake, and then you've also got Matt Freese, and now Koke Vegas, Jackson Lee, and Nate Silvera. You know, looking back at the pedigree of all of those different men from different countries, all with the same common purpose, what would you see was what they all shared a similar trait in that's helped them flourish so successfully?
Just honestly, the personality of the guys. You know, not one of those players that I've been fortunate to be around. You know, we didn't always agree, but they were always open-minded to get better. The fierce competitiveness that they had every single day, their open-mindedness when they stepped on the pitch to go, okay, I'm going to get better today. You know, they wouldn't take days off. And when I say that, I speak to the players a lot about this. It's like everyone has bad days. Everyone does, me included. You know, so can you communicate that with the peers or your working group? Because if you don't, then you're left second guessing. And if someone reacts a certain way, and you know they're having a bad day, well, that's helps you handle that. That helps you kind of navigate the scenario you're faced with. But those guys, like the top guys, you know, I was very fortunate to be around Andre with the Union First Team, with Phil Wedden, their goalkeeper coach. Phil's a big mentor of mine and someone I respect tremendously. And those guys, they would never have a bad day from a concentration standpoint. Bad day technically, sometimes you see the ball a lot better than other days. But when it came to train, when it came to work, when it came to like be focused in the moment, they didn't have a bad day from that standpoint. So they were able to compartmentalize whatever's going on to, okay, I'm ready to work now. This is my job. You know, this is not something I'm just playing at, you know. So that to me is where all of those players that you mentioned there, they were always dialed in from a concentration standpoint, ready to apply themselves. Whether they did or they didn't, that changes. But when it came to work, like, they were ready, you know. And so that to me goes back to the personality. What are they like in that moment? You know, are they ready to work, or are they ready just to take a day off? And the good ones don't really do that too often.
Getting in specifically to our goalkeeping trio from this previous year, I want to start with the clean sheet reward of offering donuts.
Yeah.
It was a bit of fun controversy online. I guess I want to ask you first and foremost. I think I know the answer, but where did the idea come from to reward clean sheets with donuts? Is that unique to something that you've seen in the past, or is that something that like global football always does, and we don't need to make such a big deal out of it?
I think I definitely didn't really see it back home in Europe too much. It was definitely something that I was just first kind of being exposed to in America. The donut referred to as not letting a goal in. So I think, develop that idea into, okay, what can you do for the guys? So definitely maybe the last 5 or 6 years, it's something that's kind of evolved a little bit. We had an inflatable donut that Koke decided to display around his waist one day when we kept a clean sheet, the team, the goalkeepers in the team. And then, we've got some really good donut shops around here, right? So I think Karno said, okay, we'll utilize one. I don't know if I can say the brand. We'll utilize one brand for, a win and some kind of, and then we'll go a little bit more high end for a win and a clean sheet. So, Karno paid for that out of his own pocket. So credit to him, and the guys were very appreciative. But I think that's just something that's universally now developed. But first time I was exposed to was when I moved over here 5 or 6 years ago.
For you personally as the coach, but maybe also to speak on behalf of the players, how important is a clean sheet for you guys with the keeper core? Fans obviously equate goals as the thing that, gets the win across the board. But in the difference between like a 3-1 outcome or a 3-0 outcome, how critical is it for a keeper, their confidence, their passion, their attitude on getting those clean sheets?
I think it's a point of pride for sure, But I don't think it's just the goalkeepers. I think the defensive unit, you'll see now in modern game, defenders celebrating blocks and, closing down players at the last minute of the game just as much as you'll see a forward celebrating a last-minute winner. So I don't think it's, listen, ultimately the goalkeeper, some guys might have, different incentives in their contract for number of clean sheets and things like that. But you don't really think about that in the moment. It's just like they work so hard. Our guys, honestly, it's been such a pleasure. Like I said to them, I appreciate learning with them and from them throughout the year, because I was developing, I was learning from them just as much as they were I. So it's very much a player's game. But I think the defensive unit, goalkeepers, backline, defensive midfielders, they work so hard. They put so much kind of grunt work in that, no one's really watching how they organize and what's their positioning like, what's their reading of the game like. They just look at that final action. But I think something that our group did so well this year was they put out fires before they really developed. And, the personality, I'll say it again, like the leadership qualities of the guys, being willing to coach each other in the moments, being willing to kind of raise the level of expectation and standards of behaviors in them tough, tense moments. We didn't have one guy who shirked that responsibility. So, yeah, it's a point of pride for a goalkeeper. It's always nice not to concede a goal. It's like an exclamation mark on a win, like we've took it to the opposition and they've give us their best shot, but not able to get past us. But I think it's a group, it's the goalkeepers and the team. Because if I want them as a coach and as a staff, we want them to be a part of the team. Well, then we've got to celebrate the successes of scoring a goal as a unit, but we've also got to celebrate the success of not letting the opposition score as a unit. It's not just an individual. So that's my take on it. It's a unit, it's a team thing very much, not just an individual reward.
Looking back at the roster that you helped construct last season, Koke Vegas, the marquee signing, first player in club history, but first player for this season as well. He's a goalkeeper, as we all know. I guess the first question is what was it about Koke's game that made it a clear and obvious choice for you guys to bring him on in that marquee capacity? And then the second question, just as a follow-up, if you want to start thinking about it, is when you sign a keeper as your first player, are you confining yourself to a set of tactics that you're going to have to rally behind for that keeper's particular individual talents? Does that help or hurt the future plans for the rest of that roster as it's being built out? So Koke's skill set
was, clear and obvious for everyone to see in the league in his time in San Diego. His pedigree playing in Spain, La Liga, against some of the best players in Europe. His willingness to want to come over here as well. He wanted to play. He could have taken more money and stayed in Europe and, continued to try and earn his opportunity there. But for a man to go, okay, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to put myself out there. So that first conversation of how he ended up in San Diego for me was really important. His skill set, he's an extremely talented athlete. The person himself, through your interactions with him and the fact that, he is so humble, he's so open to answer questions and give his opinion on certain things. For a player like that to be, given the opportunity to be the first signing in club's history, I think it was just a real natural fit. He was someone that we identified early, based on free agent markets and what we wanted out of the position. Clearly, we always joke that he was arguably the best defensive midfielder in USL. But again, his game evolved too, Like we had some really open and honest conversations when we signed him. I remember driving to Dolores talking about how is he going to handle if he's not in the team, And he kind of looked at me as if to say, like, is that a real possibility? And I'm like, if performances aren't there, yeah. Like just because you are this number one signing that we've kind of decided to move forward with, like there's going to be a competition for a spot. And he openly admitted that was a moment that in his previous experiences he didn't handle well. So as an area of growth, he said, listen, that was something that I would like to challenge myself again. He handled it, exemplary in terms of his professionalism this year when he was faced with it. But the way that, again, the man himself, the person, the skill set goes without saying what he can do, but his game evolved a lot. If we compare his playing styles for the last 2 years to this, he improved in a lot of areas. And maybe it's not the big dramatic areas, but his understanding of the game, his positional reading, his ability to put himself out there and coach the team in front of him, he's still improving at that. But his game developed a lot this year, and that's down to him. That's not me, that's the environment and the players around him. And that's down to him, how open-minded he was to get better. So the fit was really easy for us, really obvious. He wanted to be a part of it, and that's like wanting someone to want to be here is so important too when you're starting something from the ground up. But his want to be here was really clear and really evident. How that kind of aligns with moving forward, it really doesn't, because my goal as a goalkeeper unit is everyone's different, we know that. But if someone who'd never watched the position before, watched Koke, watched Jackson, watched Nate, understanding they're different athletes, but how they play the game, they all should have similar behavioral traits. From a tactical understanding, they should all be in the similar positions. They should also act and support the play when we have the ball. They should also be really aggressive defending the spacing behind, which allows our back line to be more aggressive, which allows our midfield unit to be more aggressive. We want to win the ball as high up the field as possible. We press to score. Goalkeeper is the last part of that. So, yeah, listen, when we looked at Koke's areas of improvement are some of Jackson's strengths. Some of Jackson's areas of improvement are Koke's strengths. Nate falls very much into that unit too. He was an integral part of what we did this year. But they all really were open-minded and played the position how we wanted them to play it. So picking Koke didn't really have an influence on who we went or who we go down the road with. It's just we wanted them to fit into what we wanted the team to be, and all three of those guys were really professional. You know, I can't speak highly enough of the group.
You know, you kind of just answered my next question already, but I was going to ask, do you at times when you've signed one keeper, whether that's the primary or someone that's going to be competing for minutes, do you look naturally for a difference tactically in your secondary keeper so you have another weapon off the bench in case a team is lining up in a way to break a press, or you need long ball accuracy out of maybe someone that, you know, let's just say, for example, Koke didn't have that skill. I'm not saying he doesn't, but do you naturally look for yin and yang at that, or do you want those similarities so that if one of them is out for an injury, it doesn't disrupt the team's tactics at all?
I think in a perfect world, you look for similarities when you're scouting and identifying players. You're looking at certain behaviors, certain skill sets that they have. So, but ultimately, you know, I mentioned the word effectiveness. Sometimes a goalkeeper can be really effective without looking like or behaving like another goalkeeper, right? So ideally, yeah, we want goalkeepers who have similar skill sets, similar strengths, similar areas of improvement, so that we can all develop together. But development and progression isn't linear, right? So when we identified Jackson and we identified Nate to be a part of it, having them understand what our goalkeeper methodology is, what our team tactical principles are, how we're going to incorporate the two to be aligned, then that's the coaching job, that's the teaching job, you know? So when I talked about Koke's areas of improvement with some of Jackson's strengths, that just happened to be, you know, it wasn't this is a strength, this is an area of improvement. We just felt that Koke was better at certain things and Jackson was better at certain things. So it was a natural, okay, you've got somebody to look up to, you've got somebody to look up to. That's where the push, that's the tension on the rope that we create in the environment every day. But it's not something that I think is healthy, right? Because you now have to do more work. If I'm looking for someone who's polar opposites, then it's really hard to now bring that group together to provide a consistent performance. So doing your work, scouting, analyzing, not taking a snapshot, because that's the worst thing that you can do as a coach. So making sure you do your homework so you can, you know, when someone asks you, when Carno asks you, or some ownership asks you, like, you can put that name forward, you can say it with your chest with confidence and be willing to back yourself in that decision.
So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. You know, how did Jackson Lee land on your guys' radar? Because you look at his performance with West Virginia, he was a standout keeper. Obviously, LAFC had some interest there. How did Jackson Lee end up, you know, not only just signing for the club, but how did he get on your radar?
I think, you know, in Philadelphia, I was kind of charged with the goalkeeper college scouting for the draft. So Jackson was someone that, you know, I knew from his time, and then as he transitioned into West Virginia, I knew him through USL2, which is like the summer league for the college players. He played up in Seacoast. So I know some of the Seacoast coaches really well. We were talking about players, and I asked about Jackson. They raved about his personality, you know, the man first. So then when I watched him, he has a really good understanding of the game. He has some senior experience from his time back home in Australia, being around the men's game. He performed like a man for sure. He held himself accountable in his actions. The conversations when we first started talking on the phone were really intellectual. He loved talking about the game. You could see he was a student of the game. We would talk about different goalkeepers in the world and certain personality traits and behaviours, and he could recall some of them very clearly. Watched him play a bunch of times. Connor watched him play as well. And then I met with him and his father down at the College Cup last year. I went down to scout him and a couple of other players. Really good conversation. And his dad flew over from Australia. And when I walked up there, I introduced myself. I said, "Oh, listen, sir, would you like to sit down and join me?" And his dad just put his hand up and he says, "No, he's a man. He can do this." Which I really appreciated, because as a dad flying halfway across the world to see your boy, you want to spend time with him, But he was like, "No, listen, he's a man. He doesn't need me for this." So when I had that conversation with Jackson, I just said, "Listen," I outlined what I think he could do with us. I outlined what I think we could do for him. The opportunity to play senior football, to compete in a really challenging environment, and ultimately he, after getting drafted by LAFC in the first round, he decided that this was a better fit for him, which was brave on his part, because it would have been easy to go in the lights of MLS, but he wanted to play. He wanted to test himself against men, senior footballers with experience, which again, the personality of that decision, brave, confident, strong in his kind of mindset and in his beliefs of what he think he can do. And that's the type of guys that we have from 1 to 26 in our group, guys who really wanted to test themselves, really wanted to be a part of it, and Jackson just fit nicely.
Jackson definitely was tested this season, both with injuries to Koke early on in the season, plus the infamous red card. Jackson had multiple looks between the sticks, so much so that fans started kind of developing I love this keeper and I love this keeper. I guess, it's probably the answer is it's a great problem to have when you have two highly competent and ambitious keepers. But when you start looking at who's going to make the game day roster, how difficult does it come down for you as the director of goalkeeping when it's like, hey, here's that one extra thing you did in training today, so this is why we're going to pick you. It's not just because you're the first signing, like you said earlier. You really have to earn the spot. How hard is it to tell who's dressing and who's not on game day?
I think it's, again, not taking snapshots. It's knowing where people are at in their kind of cycles of development. Obviously form fluctuates. I thought our goalkeeper unit was tremendous this year. I thought they really kind of showed up in some big moments. I always encourage fans. Fans pay good money to come and watch the team. So listen, they're absolutely entitled to their opinions and develop affections towards certain players, and that's what makes the game so good, because it is a game of opinions. But I think as a staff, I don't feel that we got the decision making wrong this year with who played. Jackson earned every opportunity that he got. It wasn't given. No one's doing anybody any favors, and I think Koke's open-mindedness to those moments, Jackson's willingness to step up and be counted in some big moments. I think he got a lot of recognition early in his professional career, some team of the week kind of nods and some save of the week nods, and again, no one does anybody any favors in professional sports. So how hard was it? Again, communication makes it easier. Just being upright and honest with the players. Don't have to agree. We don't have to always get along, but just being really direct in the communication. We're going to make a change. Here's my why. As a staff, we get paid to make them decisions. Ultimately, Kano makes the final one, but he takes on board all feedback from the rest of the staff. He's excellent like that in terms of making sure that we all have a chance to give our say and stake our claim for certain moments and certain decisions. But it wasn't really hard, because our relationship with the players and as a staff is so strong, and the communication is so clear and so consistent as well, that the decisions were easy and they were accepted in the way in which we want them to be received. So yeah, but I thought, listen, I couldn't speak highly of all those guys, and Nate was really unlucky too, not to get involved in some games, because there was players we talked about being stars in their role. I know Karno speaks a lot about Kevin Vang, and I've known Vang a long time, but Nate fits that category too. He was integral to some of the success that we had this year as a group, and the players really appreciated everything that he did and the way that he represented himself and the team.
And I'm so glad you brought up Nate, because it'd be irresponsible not to mention his valuable contribution to the keeper core. When you're looking at that third keeper, obviously there's probably going to be a drop down just in terms of budgetary constraints, I would imagine, as you continue to fill out roster spots going into that. How hard is it to find the right person with the right attitude and the right professional skills that are going to challenge for a starting spot, but most likely won't see minutes? Like what kind of person are you looking at? What kind of fabric of a keeper do you need in that role to play such a critical part on the team?
Yeah, they just need to be an ultra professional. When Nate and I first had conversations, I didn't say, Nate, you're going to come in and be a 3. I said, you're going to come and be a part of the goalkeeper group. In my time in New England, in Philadelphia, we used all 3 goalkeepers for the last, I think, 6 or 7 years that I'd been a part of an organization. So having 3 for me is the perfect number. But those guys were so close. They push each other every day, sometimes to a point where they would coach each other, and I would just sit back and just watch the interactions. The video sessions that we did was player led. You need to receive feedback from me face to face in a room, so that you can handle that and compartmentalize that the right way. It develops a skill set of communication within a group, but it also develops a skill set of just integrity. And I think that's what the word integrity to me was what the group resembled this year. The professionalism of the unit, they need to be fiercely competitive, to a point where like it's getting borderline, but never gets out of hand. And every day there was moments. These guys were competing like MFers every single day, but they were the first person. If somebody did something well, they were the first person to celebrate with that person. There was never a F you, or never I'm going to try and stitch you up in your reps or your situations because I want to stand out. The integrity of the group was pretty special, and Nate's level of integrity was excellent. And he showed up to work every single day, even when the days when he wasn't on the travel party. He'd be the first in the building, getting his work in, being a professional. I'd call him in the afternoon. He'd be in the gym doing extras. He doesn't have to do that. But the amount of times that I would call him just to check how the session was when we're on the road, and he's like in the gym, like the integrity of the man was pretty special. And he's going to be. I'm sad to see him go, but I understand he has to move on to the next stage of his career, and he's going to be successful no matter what he does.
With Nate announcing his retirement from the game, how is the hunt for the next third coming? Obviously, I shouldn't even call it third now. It's just the keeper core. What new talent profile are you looking for? How is that hunt going?
It's going well, yeah. No, I think we've identified some profiles that we're really bullish on. It's, as you're right to say, it's not a third. It's a goalkeeper that can compete with the unit. We're looking for goalkeepers with similar skill sets to the 2 that we have, and we want somebody who's hungry and fierce and wants to be a part of it. So yeah, we're making good progress. Obviously, a lot of moving parts right now within kind of roster construction of not just our league but MLS as well. But we've identified some profiles that we're really bullish on, and hopefully there'll be some kind of announcement in the not too distant future.
Well, we look forward to that. I guess to wrap things up here, I don't know, do you do Spotify?
I do.
So if you were to Spotify wrap this, what was maybe your favorite couple of facts about the goalkeeper core, about the season at large as you look back at 2024? What are those moments that ring true for you?
Watching the celebration of the goalkeeper who is not playing during some big moments. When we got our first win in Vegas, one of the last actions was a cross into the box. Jackson came and claimed it at the back post. The first person off the bench to celebrate and fist pump and clap was Koke. And I showed that to the group. Koke makes the penalty save at Loudon. The first person off the bench to celebrate was Jackson. So watching the behaviors of the goalkeepers who they want to play, like they that's their job, they want to play, but they're not. They're the first person off the bench celebrating the success of their teammate, of their brother in arms, kind of who's working every day. special moments, some special reactions, which the TV cameras don't see. But when we have video, and when we can drag the camera around to see different parts of the field, watching that was really important, because it means that these guys respect each other, and the integrity in the group is special. And then I think, you know, I think you asked me at the block party, give me a word to summarize the year, and I think I said emotional. I still haven't watched the final back yet. I watched 6 minutes and I had to turn it off. So, you know, I'll get there eventually. But the emotional side was, we had an opportunity to bring the team and staff around to my house. My wife was very gracious to kind of open up our house, and we had like a team barbecue. And, you know, I think we were there for maybe 5 or 6 hours, and no one talked football. You know, it was a just get to know the families, and players brought their partners around, and there was kids there, and it was just like, that was the emotional side, you know, was just getting to know these players, getting to know affection about them, and, you know, what makes them tick. Absolutely nothing to do with football. So the emotional piece lives true to this day of what the year would kind of encapsulate, but also the integrity and the reactions of the guys who were fierce competitors, but still respected each other enough to be like, yeah, that was pretty special. So those were a couple of moments that kind of stand out for me.
And then looking ahead, what are you the most excited about for the 2025 season?
Day one preseason, you know, like my wife can't believe that I'm watching footage and looking at clips all the time. She was like, will you just take a day, you know? But we all just love the game, you know, it just consumes you, and we have to, you know, devote time to other parts of our lives. But, you know, day one of preseason, there's nothing like it when the guys come back in the building, and it's, you know, handshake. We shake hands every single day. You know, we look each other in the eyes. We're present in the moment. We shake each other's hand, and I think that is a really special trait that the group had, and we want to kind of continue that on next year. Obviously, the stadium is the one that everyone's talking about, like opening up. That's going to be pretty special. But for me, it's the first day of preseason. You know. And just being present in that moment, because the reality of our business is the guys who walk in the building on that day might not be the same guys who walk out of the building on the final one, you know. So just being present in that moment, and just getting ready to start something new with your group and your teammates and your friends, it's a special moment.
Well, Coach Spratt, we look forward to that next year. We look forward to the Florida preseason camp, Bermuda, of course, as well, and just getting to see how this team blossoms into its next iteration for the 2025 campaign. This episode's going to wrap around Christmas time, so I think, is it Happy Christmas back home?
Happy
Is
Christmas.
Happy Christmas?
Happy Christmas, that's right.
So Happy Christmas and Happy Holidays. And is there any well wishes you want to say before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I just think, you know, we appreciate every bit of support that we got. So, you know, to everyone who listens to the podcast, to the fan groups, the people who've kind of spent their hard-earned money to come down and cheer us, whether it be raining or, you know, 80 degrees outside. We certainly appreciate every ounce of support that we've got from the group. So I'd just like to pass on my happy holidays and season's wishes to all the supporters of our IFC out there, and we look forward to seeing you back here in 2025.
And until then, happy holidays as well from everyone here at Raising Anchor, and make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all of your New England soccer coverage, and Rhode Island FC news at theblazingmusket.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky at RIFC Podcast, the Instagram at Raising Anchor, and our own website, raisinganchorpodcast.com. Coach Spratt anchors up, and we will see you in the new year.
Thank you.